My name is Adam Sternbergh. I work at New York Magazine. I'll be moderating the event tonight. And I'd like to welcome to the stage the star of The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, Jessica Chastain. Please welcome her.
Hello, everybody.
So welcome. Congratulations on the film.
Thanks.
You are the her of the them. The cut of the film that we just saw is The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, them. For the people here who aren't familiar with the history of the film and the different versions of it that exist, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Ned Benson, the writer-director, wrote him version about 10 years ago. And we were on set for Tree of Life in Texas, and he had given me the script to read and asked me if I'd like to play Eleanor. And I loved his script. He's such an incredible writer. But to me, she kind of felt like not a fully realized person. And I mentioned that to him, and then he decided to write the same story from the female perspective. So we have Him and Her, which actually opens October 10th, and this is a combination of the two.
And how do the films work? This is, I understand that they're told from two different points of view, but are we seeing the same scene shot differently from different points of view? And then how did Ned sort of seamlessly put those together into the cut that we just saw? Yeah,
in Him and Her, there's about 4 scenes that are in both films that are shot completely different. We wear different costumes. They look the same, but they might be a different color or a different cut. And a couple of the lines are different, and definitely the intent of what we were playing is different. Because James and I played 2 different characters. I play Eleanor Rigby in Her, and then I play Connor's perception of Eleanor Rigby in him. So that means, of course, in his version, some people who see him first find Eleanor to be slightly cold and mysterious and detached, and they have difficulty relating to her, and then they don't really understand her until they understand why she left in Her. And them, to be fair, them has more of the Her storyline, not because of me, but because we had so many more actors in the Her version. Like there's William Hurt and Isabelle Huppert, Viola Davis, Jess Weixler. There was so much of more bigger ensemble. So I think Ned was trying to get all the actors involved.
That seems like a very interesting acting challenge to do a film, because I imagine you're filming the scenes for both films in the same locations and everything at the same time. So in one version you're playing the character, and then you're playing the other character's perception of your character. So how do you do that?
Well, the good thing is Ned knew that it would be complicated. So we did each scene separate from one another. For example, the car scene where they get caught in the rain, we would shoot Connor's version of what happened before lunch. Then we would change our clothes and then come back and shoot like it's a completely different scene. So it wasn't like, okay, the camera's at this angle, let's do Connor's version, and then we'll do Eleanor's version. We were able to find it as we would any scene in a film. But it's great. I'm sure like most actors, I mean, this is such a great exercise for us because so much is about what you're playing and your objective. And, you know, perhaps in Eleanor's version, she's trying to connect to Connor, trying to like figure out, you know, she wants to pick it back up where they had left off. And in his version, she's perhaps teasing him a little bit. And I got to see what happened to my performance based on what I was playing.
And so it sounds like it's almost like playing 2 different characters. Totally. Did you have an affinity over time for one character over the other? Did you find one easier to play?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was more interested in playing Eleanor, like the real version of her. And that's where I started from when approaching it. I made her as full as I could make the character. So I understood her. And then I had to then strip things away when playing her in Connor's version. And instead of thinking like, you know, taking control over your character like most of us do, I then thought, what can I do as an actor to help move forward James's story? This is what he believes and this is where he is. What can I do as an actor to help him have that perception of her? So it's an exercise in like how important your scene partners are, and this kind of like give and take, and there's a generosity. Like when the last scene, when Eleanor and Connor finally come together, his day, I'm talking to James about, all right, where do you feel like you are right now, and what does Eleanor help you in the scene, like talking to him about his character's journey, and then playing what I could to complement that. And then he did the same for me on mine. I love working with actors. That's my favorite part of this, is that collaboration and that dance. And to me, it was like being in a scene class where a teacher gives you a completely different objective, and it changes the direction of something.
It's such an interesting reaction to have to a script, and obviously a very rare opportunity for someone to say, okay, I'm going to write a whole other movie for you based on your character's point of view. But I imagine a lot of times you get scripts where the character you're looking at is most movies are sort of told through one character's perspective. And I often wonder, for the other actors, how do you adjust to that? Do you have to always believe that the movie is your character's movie no matter what?
I think so. I think as small as your role is, you have to make your character, the character has to believe that the movie's about them, because that's how you make someone feel like they're a real, breathing person. I have no problem at all with playing size of characters, but sometimes to me, like, you could show up like Viola Davis in Doubt. I believe that character thought the whole movie was about her. I could see so much about who that woman was. I think it's one scene in the film. I think director, if I was directing something, which I'm not a director, of course I would never approach it this way. But as an actor, we have to defend our characters, and we have to flesh them out so much that we can show up for one scene and really own the space.
See, now that you mention that, I'm picturing all these different movies told from the different, like the version of Doubt that is all about Viola Davis's character waking up and having this thing, and then she goes to meet with them.
Right? I would watch that movie.
Totally, but there's only so much time. That's the problem. The other thing I thought was so interesting about this movie, and I wonder as an acting challenge, is there's so much information that is revealed throughout the film to the audience. And as an actor, knowing that that's the way the film's going to operate, how do you sort of incorporate that information into your portrayal of the character? Because obviously you know things that we don't yet know, and you don't want to give them away, but you also need them to inform your performance. So how did you approach that for this?
I left a lot of that up to the director's hands of how much he wanted to show in his storytelling. For me, when approaching Eleanor, I fleshed out in my mind everything about her. James and I spoke about what the first date was like, how they met, what their wedding was like, how did he propose to her. We had a very strong idea of what their relationship was. We had a very strong idea of the child, what had happened with the child, who found the child, what that day was like, what the week was like. And we had all of that. But I've found in real life, we don't know most people's what they're suffering with, because it takes a lot to actually speak of what is tearing you up, and it's usually very private things. And so with Eleanor, as long as I had it, I had to trust that Eleanor doesn't want to showcase it, because if she showcases it and someone's constantly asking her what's wrong or talk to me, and if she talks about it, she jumps off a bridge. The only way Eleanor survives in her mind is moving to a different life, blacking out her eyes, cutting her hair off, becoming a different person. And so she's doing everything she can to not be reminded of it. So for me as an actor, I couldn't think of how much are we letting the audience know, because the director can control that on if he stays in a wide shot, if there's a close-up of my face, what I'm feeling, he can kind of gauge that.
Was there any particular moment or scene in the film that was particularly challenging to you or hard to play? I mean, it seems watching that there are many moments that you can imagine would be hard to play, and I wonder if there was one in particular that stuck out for you.
Definitely the last scene with James, because you know, sometimes when we show up, we're like, oh, okay, this is the point. You know, this is through the script, the character, this is where she has to have this moment. And after, at the end, when she is reminded of what her child looks like, then she can move forward. But that's where everything's leading to. The day, you know, you wake up, you think, okay, I'm going to do this scene. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but we'll see what happens. And it's James' story. Show up, you kind of go through it. You like crying. It's exhausting. You go home and you think, thank God I don't have to do that ever again. And then the next day I would come again to do Eleanor's version. And an example, like a little things that change from film to film is for James, for him, he wakes up and she's surrounded by toys and going through a box. And in her, he wakes up because she's putting the blanket on him. So there were a lot of issues about perspective.
We got some very good questions from the audience as well, so I'm going to pull them out and ask one of them now. This is sort of a general career arcing question. Were there any tools you used to keep your spirit and mindset healthy and on target towards your goals? I assume that means sort of over your career, but over the shooting of this film or all of the above?
Oh gosh, tools to keep my mind healthy. I've had a great teacher at Julliard. We studied Alexander technique and did some Suzuki, and there was a lot, and I worked with Moni Yakim in movement, and there was a lot of like exhausting the body to free the mind in a way where sometimes, especially with me, because I used to be, and I still have a little bit, I used to be a very anxious person, and I had a lot of energy and a lot of nerves. And we realized like through kind of exhaustion and settling the energy, the mind can then settle. And from there, I started learning meditation, and I try to keep up with yoga. I find that anything that can help you deal with your concentration and calm your mind is the best thing for acting. Because then no matter what, if you're doing a scene and you see someone moving around, it doesn't completely take you out of what you were doing. You can kind of just go, I'm with this person in front of me, and we're just going to be here. So for me, that was the main thing that kept me sane.
That's interesting because you actually touched on pretty much all the other questions in different ways. So I'm going to pick one of them at random that I know that there's a question in here about that instance when you're on set and things are moving around and all that. Someone had asked, how do you create a person when you are in a close shot? For example, if you're doing a monologue where you've done all the sensory work beforehand, but now you've got a camera in your face. And I feel like as maybe the only non-actor in the room, something that is fascinating to me about acting and the difference between doing stage work and film work is how intimate film work is, but also how you are able to maintain a character, maintain a true emotional moment in the midst of all the stuff that we as the audience can't see, all the kind of chaos and the distractions and the set and everything like that. So what's the secret to that?
Al Pacino gave me the secret to that. Because, that's a little name dropping there. But it was my first film I ever worked on, and it was like unlocked so much to me. But I used to be really afraid of the camera because I had studied theater and I didn't understand. Everyone kept talking about it was two different styles of acting. And I was like, what does that mean? Just do nothing. And film acting is not doing nothing, but you feel like that's what everyone keeps saying to you. And so I felt like this anxiety every time I saw the camera. And he told me that instead of ignoring it, you have to give everything that you are to the camera. And you have to accept that it's part of you. And you and I, if we were filming a scene right now, the camera would be right there. The camera sees more into what I'm doing than you do. Because the lighting, it's slightly dark, you can't see my eyes, but a camera will blow my eyes up to this huge a screen and it actually can see what I'm feeling. So if I allow myself to be seen by the camera, if I see it as an extension of my soul and my innermost thoughts and feelings and secrets, the camera is connected to all of that. It is me. If I know that and I accept it, then I can forget about it. And just like I know my arm is a piece of me, I don't think about it all the time. It's there and I use it, and it helps me move forward. The same thing with the camera, and that changed my life completely. And now I feel like I can use it. If I have secrets, I know that if I show my face, there'll be a glimmer of something, a thought. If I'm hungry, my stomach growls, the camera will somehow sense it. And it was such a profound, beautiful thing that he said. I still have difficulty, though, sometimes with distractions. And the worst, or the one time I really had it, was I did Miss Julie with Lee Volman directing. And I have so much respect for her. I think she's a goddess. And she would always be next to the camera. And whenever, like the first day, I would be acting, and then I would just see her moving with the camera. And every time I would just see her, I was like, that's Lee Volman. I wonder if she likes what I'm doing. And then I would think, like, she'd be so much better in this part than me. Like, while I'm playing Julie, which is the opposite of what you should be thinking. So that was the one time I had to pull her aside and say, I can't believe I'm asking you this. Can you hide from me a little bit? And it's only because I have such reverence for you.
That's an excellent secret. I have to, if you're gonna get the secret to film acting, Al Pacino is probably a good source for it. And I had always assumed that the key was to ignore it, to just put it out of your mind rather than really like embrace it in that way. Do you feel like doing that film with Al Pacino and getting that advice was a real sort of turning point for you?
Yeah, because I was predominantly a theater actress. And I got cast in Salome, and we did the play in Los Angeles. And I got to see how he changed his performance in front of 1,400 people at night. And then the next morning, we'd be on a soundstage filming it. And I could see what he was doing that was different. And also, he was directing the film. So little things that he gave me. Like one time, he said it always has to be true with the camera. Theater, you can fake it, You can, if you're not feeling it or whatever, you can fake it and rely on your technique. But with film, whatever you're feeling, the camera will see. So you always try to put yourself in a position where you're feeling what the character would be feeling. And if you think like, I feel like this stress or da-da-da, and I don't think she would be thinking, you have to stop judging actually how you are and just go, maybe I'm feeling this because actually the character is. And you have to then start to see yourself as one with that character. And so yes, it completely changed me as an actress working with him.
And now, in terms of doing film roles, since that film, you've had such a really interesting, varied film career and done all sorts of a wide range of roles. And I wonder what draws you to a role. Is it a character? Is it a script? Is it a collaborator? You've worked with some amazing directors. What is the most important thing to you in terms of choosing something you want to work on?
I'm in a really lucky position right now where I get incredible scripts to read, and I get to choose things, which 4 or 5 years ago, the idea that I would get to choose and not beg is very different. And so now usually it starts with the collaborator. Who is it? Like I knew when I got the call, Christopher Nolan had a film and he wanted to send me the script. I was like, yes, I let me read it. But of course, that's someone I want to work with. And also I know with collaborators that they'll be my teachers. With actors that I'm working with, I believe that if you work with someone better than you, they always make you better. So I always try to work, like working with Michael Shannon on Take Shelter. He's such a great actor, and I know people know that he's a great actor, but I don't think people really know how great he is. That was such a masterclass for me. So it's collaborators first, and then I don't want to repeat a character that I've played already. Like I said, I'm happy doing one scene in a movie, but I have to grow from it in some way.
You mentioned Al Pacino, Michael Shannon. One of the privileges we have as New Yorkers is we get to see these actors on stage sometime and see them do that work, which is so interesting. Do you go see a lot of theater? Do you watch a lot of movies? Do you like to drink in other people's performances? Are there things you try to keep at arm's length so that they don't affect what you're doing?
No, I see anything and everything. This weekend, I went to Cabaret and saw my friends, right? Michelle Williams and Linda Emond, who the three of us worked together at Williamstown, and I saw that great performance. And then Sunday night, I went and saw Gone Girl with fantastic Rosamund Pike. Is that how you say her name?
Yes, Rosamund Pike, yes.
Who's been acting for 10 years or more, and I've liked her. Always thought she was great since Pride and Prejudice, but finally gets to sink her acting teeth into a great role, and hooray for her, because she's so good in it. So yeah, I'm always at the movies or at the theater.
That was an interesting film as well. This film, in a strange way, made me think of that film because it's also a film where there's a character who's, at certain points, you're seeing almost other people's perceptions of her. And so I had to imagine that was also an interesting kind of acting challenge for her, was to sort of play... I'm sorry, we're talking about this movie you didn't just watch.
But I'm
and
not
it's
even
also
in.
full of spoilers. So actually, we'll just stop talking about it right now. But it's funny that like that must be an opportunity that's pretty rare to sort of do that kind of character where from one scene you get to be someone, your husband's idea of you. In one scene you get to be, I know, I'm on thin ice. Anyway, so Eleanor Rigby, yes. And you have a couple other movies coming out this fall as well.
Yes, I'm in Interstellar.
But you can't talk about those movies either, though, right?
I can talk a little bit
Can you tell
about
us
them.
about Interstellar? What happens?
Yeah, I can.
They find
You want the
planet
spoiler?
at the end?
Yours is a whole spoiler interview. I can tell you that what I loved so much about Chris's films is that they always felt like independent films. I loved Memento so much, and even like Inception, even though it's a huge studio movie, it feels like an independent filmmaker made it on a large scale. And when I was reading the script for Interstellar, I thought, well, this is some like sci-fi space epic movie, 2001: Space Odyssey, which I love. But then what I was so happy with is when I was reading the script and about my character, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but as much as there's like science in the film and it deals with outer space and like the great beyond and the adventure of what it is to tackle the unknown, there's also deals with, it turns the direction around and goes into like the emotions and the unknown of what love is. What actually is it? And what happens to someone when they die? Are they with you still? Or when they leave you, are they with you? Do you communicate with them? And what I love about my character, and like I said, I want to play women that have journeys, is that when we meet her, she's incomplete in some emotional way, and then at the end, she is complete.
You know, there were people online who were upset because they felt like in the trailer they could figure out that the little girl with red hair grows up to be you.
Some people thought it was Anne Hathaway.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to ask you this because it's close to my own heart and head. At some point in your career, I imagine someone must have said, you got to dye your hair.
Oh, yes. Before, like blonde. Everyone wanted me to dye my hair blonde.
I thank you on behalf of all redheads for standing up.
The ginger brigade.
I'm going to read another question. It could be, you mentioned going to Julliard, and we're very close to Julliard right now, and it's so a sort of a homecoming. And I think one of the questions was just, here it is, how do you feel your Julliard training impacts your work and career?
My training impacts everything, beyond just even my career. Even talking about the idea of meditation, and it taught me, before I went to school, I had such difficulty in like public school system in the United States. I thought I was super stupid. I thought like I had terrible concentration. I thought I couldn't get anything, and that I was a disappointment to teachers because, I was just, to be honest, I was just bored. Like Like it wasn't like speaking to me in the way that it needed to speak to me in like a creative form. And then going to school, actually, I remember the first year we had a theater history class, and I was reading these plays like the Trojan Women and the Sheepwell and these things that completely opened something up in me. And when all of my friends were going out and partying, I was like reading and going to the New York Public Library and watching videotapes of performances of like Shakespeare in the Park from 20 years ago. And so for me, it like changed so much about who I am, because I felt like finally there was an outlet. Finally, I could explore the things that I was interested in. It introduced me to foreign films, because there's the Lincoln Plaza Cinema right here that I saw like the most beautiful films. I think I saw Et tu, Mama, Tambien there. And so that, like my personal life completely changed. And then also definitely who I was as an artist. Before I went to Julliard, I actually had someone say to me that I shouldn't go to school because it's 4 years and I would be too old to work when I got out. Which they were like, you just need to stay in LA and like audition. And my God, thank God I didn't listen to that.
In terms of your career, you've had a very interesting career, because right out of Julliard, you were a busy working actor. But then it seemed to the audience that, there was a year about 3 or 4 years ago where it all sort of coalesced, and suddenly it was like, who is this person? And she's in every movie and she's so good and everything. How aware were you of that happening? Is that more of a sort of outside perception thing? I mean, I know you're filming these things and everything sort of comes out when it comes out. So did you feel like a sea change in your own acting career at that point?
Yeah. For me, the big moment was I was at the Palm Spring Film Festival in 2011, and my films had just come out, but I couldn't really, I went to Cannes, and Tree of Life was there, and Take Shelter was there, and they won, and all these things were happening, but I didn't really feel a change in the industry. And then I went to Palm Spring Film Festival because I won a newcomer award. And I was at a restaurant and I saw Gary Oldman there, and I was completely stalking him, watching what is he ordering, all these things. And my friend was with me. She's like, you should go say hi. And I was like, no, I can't. It's I don't want to bother him. It's so embarrassing. Who am I to go talk to Gary? And I was on the red carpet, and I was doing interviews, and someone said, there's a lot of, big stars here tonight. Is there anyone you're excited to meet? And I said, well, I know Gary Oldman's here because I saw him at the restaurant, and it would be amazing to meet him because I think he's an incredible actor. As soon as I finished this, and there's an actual video of it because they were filming me do the interview. As soon as I finished it, Gary Oldman walks behind me and goes, hello, Jessica, it's nice to meet you. I'm such a fan of your work. And I was like, and he said everything that I was going to say to him in the restaurant. He actually said to me, he goes, I saw you in the restaurant today, and I was too shy to come over and say hello. And then I was like, oh my God, I was shy to come say hi to you. And then he walked away, and I turned back to the camera because that's the moment that my life changed. And it was so overwhelming. And then the interviewer goes, you have tears in your eyes. And then I started crying. And my publicist was like, all right, we need a minute. It was pretty special.
That's a good story. It would be so great if Gary Oldman walked out right now and said, yes, it's true. I verify everything, and that's to hail. I know you've said elsewhere that you feel like one of the things you would like to champion as an actor is films that tell women's stories. And I'm wondering if there's particular kinds of stories that you're interested in championing, or if there's, what are the kinds of stories that you would like to see more of and be involved in kind of bringing to film?
There was a great thing that they did, and I don't know if they do it anymore, but I heard about, they did these staged readings where they would take popular films and they would change the sex. So they did American Pie or other films, and women would read the male roles and the men would read the female roles. And the one thing that the male actors kept saying is God, this part is so lame. And so I just, I encourage filmmakers and writers, and I think we need more female filmmakers and writers, because I mean the studies that come out show how little there are, to just make it a little bit more equal. And I found like a couple of my friends are incredible writers and directors, and they said to me like, well, I'm afraid, like I don't quite know, you women are so mysterious and all these things. And I've said to them, I'm like, do me a favor, write a movie and then at the last minute change the sex. And maybe there might be a couple things you tweak, but the idea that women are either like these angels, mothers, like maternal like wives, or sluts. Like there's a whole area in between, or both. So that's what I'm interested in, like maybe combining the two.
Well, like a movie like Zero Dark 30 was so interesting because it obviously it's a female lead character and you're telling a real woman's real story. And in thinking about that movie, I was thinking, this is the kind of film we often would see with a male lead. But it's also a story that's affected by the fact that she's a woman. It's very much about being a woman in that world and the way that people react to her and don't, treat her differently than they might a man. So are you looking for sort of stories in which it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, or where the kind of unique woman's perspective is shown?
I'm looking for stuff where it doesn't matter necessarily, because even with Zero Dark 30, the character didn't think it mattered, I think the film spoke to a lot of people because, yes, and it spoke to me when I read it. I was shocked that a woman was kind of the center of finding Osama Bin Laden. And then I was really irritated at myself that I would be shocked by that. So it was like in a way, it was like a switcheroo. We didn't realize that it was like kind of like this woman's film. But yeah, the character I was playing, she struggled a lot because people would not listen to her. And I wonder, I've worked with like 3 female directors, and sometimes I can see a difference between the way a female director is treated by a crew versus a male director. And I think that's just more time, more like incredible performances, like Rosamund Pike. Is it Rosamund?
Rosamund Pike, yes.
I keep wanting to say Rosalind. I got Rosalind on the break.
It's definitely, is it Rosamund?
Rosamund, that's why I'm saying it, yeah. Like where it's like a complicated woman. I love female characters that have flaws. And I love male characters that have flaws. I just love flaws, period, in films, because we all have flaws and nobody's perfect. And I find sometimes, like when we're talking about female characters in movies, like there's the male lead and then the woman's there and she supports him and she's, like the perfect lady. And as wonderful as that is, that men see women that way, I think also it's good to see them in a more complicated way. So those are the characters I'm interested in.
Is there a male character, either from classic film or
This
a
is what you were
recent
building
film,
to.
that you wish you could play?
A male character from films. It would be so fun to play. This will never, ever happen. But a character that's like Indiana Jones. I loved that movie so much. Or I'd even love, like I said, I love going to the cinema and watching. I'd love to see like some like female explorer, going into tombs and doing all that.
Well, they did the Lara Croft, but they kind of... It didn't work out so well, that one, but
also
it's definitely up for a remake if you wanted to like get behind it.
Salt was written originally for a man, I think, that they then
right,
switched.
Yeah. And Ripley, of course, from Aliens.
Yes. Was that written as a man originally?
Yes, originally written as a man, and I think Ridley Scott cast. I think actually Sigourney Weaver was up for a different role in the film, and then somehow someone had the brainstorm.
That Ridley, he's so good.
Oh, and here we go. This is the last audience question, and it's sort of similar to what I just asked you, but it's thematically linked. And it says, P.S. I think your work is wonderful, and the wonderful is underlined, so I think that's important to say first. And the question is there a role that you've played so far in your career that you feel closest to?
I don't know if there's a role you know what? I don't know if there's a role I feel closest to, but perhaps because Ned wrote The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby for me, even though he had written the him version before we'd ever met, so she had kind of been there, but he fleshed out the her version knowing me. Like, Jess Weixler is my best friend in real life. She plays my sister in the movie. My dream actress is Isabelle Huppert. She plays my mom. Viola Davis, I like worship, and she's my friend in the movie. So perhaps having someone who knows me so well write a character for me. I've never suffered what this woman has suffered. Maybe it's closer to me, but I can tell you that the part that I had the most fun was definitely The Help. Celia Foote was like, oh my God, if I could just be her every day.
And I imagine in that movie, you had to feel like The Help was a movie about Celia Foote.
Totally, it was a movie about Celia Foote. Like, I knew everything that was happening while they were filming in the other stuff. Her, like, trying to cook her chicken and pecan pies.
And now in terms of where you're at with your career, if you could go back and tell yourself at various stages, give yourself a bit of advice or a bit of a pep talk or steer yourself away from a pitfall or something, what would you go back and tell yourself in the past?
There are, I had a lot of great lectures that I went to at school, and ones that I remember a lot, like Philip Seymour Hoffman came to my school and spoke, and Cherry Jones came and spoke. And what was really inspiring about them and what they talked about is the idea of having control of your career. Where sometimes we as actors and artists believe that other people give us the permission to be creative. And I think Phil was the one who said, like, do something every day that reminds yourself that you're an actor. So as many times as you get rejected or you feel like, why is no one getting me? Like, take back your power. And I know whenever I was in a rut and I was feeling like, okay, I've got to help myself, it was like I would schedule my days like I was going to school. So in the morning, I had to do a movement class, went to yoga. Then I would go to the public library and sit and adapt Hamlet to become like a one-woman film version. And I just did things every single day that allowed me to be creative. Go to see as many films as I could. Go to museums and theater. Don't think about the cost with that. That's one thing I would never skimp on. Like, I would skimp on food before I'd always go to be inspired because that was my passion. And so that's the one thing that I would tell myself, like, in those dark times to kind of raise me out. And I continue to tell anyone is you have control over your artistry and your creativity, and you can't give that power to anyone else.
I think that's an excellent note to end on. Thank you all for coming and seeing the film.
Thank you,
you so much for being here, Jessica Chastain. Thank you.
Thank you. I love being here. You're all so wonderful.